Hey there, this is going to be a quick sketching demonstration where I'm going to show you how I created these gestural posing sketches where I'm taking a character that I have already designed and created, the fox from Pinocchio, and I'm just going to show you how I would go about actually posing that character and drawing them in different scenarios. Let's get started. Alright, so this is going to be a real-time, fully narrated tutorial. I'm just going to sketch these things and show you how I go about thinking about the character, thinking about how we take designs that we've already created and structure that we've already sort of thought about, but how do we actually pose that character? How do we think about designing their gestures and their feelings and their emotions, and how do we sort of balance proportion, character, gesture, and structure at the same time? That's what this little sketching demo is going to be about. If you're interested in pushing your structural drawing, which again underpins a lot of the thoughts and ideas that I've got in this video, check out my free mini workshop that goes over the top 5 head mistakes that beginning artists often make when they're constructing and drawing heads and faces. Other than that, let's jump in and get sketching. All right, let's do some sketching. So I did a video talking about how I drew and designed the fox character. Check that out. There'll be a link in the description or somewhere else if you want to sort of look at how we go about sort of deconstructing a character and getting to a point where we can redraw them. What I want to do in this video, though, is do a little bit of sketching. I guess you could sort of call it gesture or pose sketching, and look at kind of how we take that idea and just sort of rinse and repeat, right? How we actually do the thing. So, and I think, again, this is a really, really important point. We can have the theory, which is sort of easy to understand and, you know, get our head around, but a lot of it comes down to implementation, right? How do we actually do this? So, again, the basics that I talked about in that video really revolved around how to kind of start creating a sort of simple mannequin, right? And again, a big part of that we're drawing in that same sort of pose, again, just to sort of reiterate, is that, you know, he sort of has this torso here, and what we're doing is kind of lining things up and putting in those basically stick figure elements, which tell us and give us proportion, right? But don't really have a lot of structure. And then how do we sort of add structure to that? That's really what that other video is about. So in this, I'm just basically going to do some sketching and sort of show you how that is implemented when we're thinking about sort of different poses, and how we can actually sort of use the character when they're acting and actually doing what we need to do. So the fox here again is like quite a unique character because he sort of has the little crutch here, which sort of has to form part of his basic posture. So we need to think about that. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can go about, you know, sketching and kind of, you know, thinking about this this sort of structure, but the main thing is just to practice whatever mannequin you've got and think about sort of, you know, how you're going to approach the gesture. Every drawing is unique because with particular drawings, what's happening is we're sort of imagining something. So, you know, I've sort of, you know, I might have a little idea in my head. Sort of, you know, maybe the fox is kind of gesturing with the crutch and sort of maybe making a point or something like that. So I have an idea in my head, and what we'll do is I'll quickly sort of sketch out and sort of show you how that's done. But the key is that every drawing is a little bit unique. Every drawing is a little bit special, and it sort of has a few key components that you need to really think about, because some some drawings are going to start with the gesture of the overall character, right? Some things are going to need to really make you focus on a particular hand, a particular point that might be in the story or the idea for an illustration you've got. It really, really is hyper-specific to the actual drawing you're doing, how you start. You might need to start by doing little sketches. You might start by doing sketches like this. But at the end of the day, it's mainly a matter of saying, what is the major point that I'm building here? What is the major element, the story, the narrative, the feeling that the character has that sort of needs to be there? That really is where we start. And again, sometimes it can, it might be the character standing a particular way. They're standing on something. They're standing in relation to something. And that's where, again, you may have to sort of start with that. Say, I've got to have them standing in a particular way. I've got to have them moving in a particular way. They've got to be pointing this way with their head, but pointing that way with their hand. Again, there's a lot of specificity that takes away the sort of ultimate unlimited amount of options that we often think we have. So start with that and think about how you're going to try and position those key points that sort of need to be there. They need to be resolved within the drawing, and they need to be a major, fundamental, early part of the gesture and the feeling of the character. All right, so there we go. As you can see, I'm just keeping these sort of fairly loose and gestural because that really is the most important step when we're thinking about how to utilize the mannequin. Again, our ability to execute on this drawing and sort of make it finished and polished is obviously going to improve as our structural drawing and just general drawing ability gets better. But when we're sort of starting out, I think it's if we can really sort of perfect this element of things, right? The sort of gesture, and again, mixing gesture with the solid structure and the mannequin that you've got, that's really where you can start to, move the needle on things that really matter, like character and characterization. Again, I'm not a huge fan of, gesture drawings that have sort of, huge amounts of sort of dynamic flow in them. I think that, again, when we're actually sort of drawing a character, we need to think mostly about how that character moves in particular. Some characters are upright, some characters are hunched over, some characters don't have flow to their gesture. They're sort of physically solid, like they're either physically strong and they don't have a lot of flow to their body because they're sort of stoic in their character, or they're kind of a little bit sort of shriveled, right? They don't move, they're not free in their body. Again, all of these things are more important. I'd recommend you think about those things as opposed to sort of, getting too involved in sort of, your sort of standard sort of gesture being sort of, about like sort of highly flowy character anatomy and those sorts of things. Think more about what the actual character is doing. So again, let's have another go, see if we can sort of think of another little way that our fox could be moving. So in this case, what I might do is think about, again, maybe the character's kind of like crouching over, talking to a little Pinocchio character. I might move this landscape so we can sort of get that happening, and maybe sort of, again, doing a sort of finger waving. Again, for me, the character is often sort of pontificating and sort of trying to show that they're intelligent, right? And that kind of, sort of pointing and finger waving is a big part of that. So again, I'm going to start in that way by trying to sort of find the gesture. And this is a case where I would sort of try and find that gesture a little bit. Try and find that sort of major gesture of our sort of sack or jelly bean kind of shape of the torso, right? Get that sort of head down there. And again, try and put in sort of nose. Now, again, we can always solid up, right? Clean up these sort of drawings later on, make them a little bit more structural, right? Adjust maybe where we've sort of missed perspective and those kind of things. The first sort of most important thing is to really kind of get a feel for how the character is moving. So again, the trick, and this is why, again, it's really important to understand how your character and your character mannequin works. The fox does this thing where he has his sort of walking cane, right? His walking stick. So in this case, I'm like, well, maybe he's not going to sort of be on it. Maybe he's sort of holding it here, right? And again, what I'm going to try and do, get rid of that sort of tangent. Fine, just make sure all of these things are going to sort of work, right? So again, maybe the character is kind of holding on to it, right? And we can kind of have it maybe going like this somewhat. Now again, this is the kind of thing where you might have to sort of adjust the size of things to make sure that, again, it's going to sort of come to the right size relative to everything else. I'm just sort of feeling out the drawing and seeing if I can kind of get that stuff happening. So again, the idea is he's going to be sort of holding it pretty sort of close to his shoulder, right? And the next and the other arm is going to sort of be coming down here. And again, I'm trying to think about where to sort of place this hand, right? The pontificating sort of hand, right? Maybe somewhere there. And again, he's going like blah, blah, blah. Trying to scam Pinocchio out of his family fortune. And again, Pinocchio is a really good sort of project because it does have these characters who are kind of, are kind of evil, and sort of, it's sort of our job to kind of try and figure out how to represent that, right, as sort of people who are creating it. But again, so I've got the jelly bean shape, right? You can see there would be that sort of, right, the torso, right? I've got the hips, and I've got, again, the knees, and he's gonna be sort of more hunched over. He could also be on sort of one knee, right? So maybe he's sort of gotten down on one knee. And again, the way we control these things is simply by adjusting the stick figure, right? Like maybe, right? So we've got knee there, and then again, let's think about where that sort of space is on the ground, right? And here, yeah, see, I reckon that stick, if it sort of comes down to there, I reckon this bit of it, again, I'm just trying to find a way to kind of have it so it doesn't interfere too much with the other drawing. So again, thinking about where that hand is going to be. And then where that, again, massing in those pants, right? So again, this is getting sort of gestural, right? Sort of pretty, sort of sketchy. We can sort of erase this, right? Sort of do another pass. And again, I feel like, again, the character's gotten a little bit sort of bigger. So I'm just gonna sort of, play around, make these things a little bit bigger too. And then here we're gonna have sort of, again, little Pinocchio there. Again, figure out his sort of space. Now, I'm going to put that collar up there. Now, these are things where, again, we start to get sort of complexity based on sort of the gesture, but that's just kind of what is going to happen, right? we'll have to figure out a lot of those kind of drawings as we go, do some extra sort of passes. But the key is everything here is kind of in the right spot. So even though this drawing is kind of like a little bit of a mess, right? That there is a feeling that I'm like, okay, no, but I've sort of figured out some of it here. Now again, I'm going to have this side of the coat coming down, which again was sort of, oh yeah, I forgot to put his tail in there. I'm going to put his sort of tail in over here, right? And so again, just sort of gestural, right? Again, just doing these sort of sketches. This is kind of how you play around with it and sort of get better at it, right? Now, again, I've got a lot of stuff that's kind of drawn through, and really it's just a matter of going through, doing another pass, right? Sort of erasing that, getting to the next level, trying to, redefine where all of these little sort of structural bits and pieces are. And again, this is why, again, these drawings might sort of look a little bit sort of rough, but that's okay because they've got most of the primary sort of structure there. All right, let's try another one. So yeah, for this, what I might do is maybe pick like a similar sort of idea there, but we might try slightly different camera angle, right? Again, just to sort of mix things up. Let's look at how we would, how we might sort of draw this character from behind. Let's start it a little bit lower down. All right, so again, in this case, I'm going to start thinking about massing in, right, those basic points. I found, again, this is, again, hard for you. In my mind, I have a better idea of this than probably what you're sort of seeing. But again, I've sort of got the hips here, right, and I've got the torso, but again, we're looking at him from behind, right? So again, then I'm going to place and try and find the head, and I'm drawing again through. So again, tricky to see at this point. Here's that stuff, and again, in this case, I'm going to try maybe a different sort of pose. I don't know whether this will sort of work, but maybe he's got his sort of hand. Right, hand on the walking stick thing. It's pretty tall. It's probably, again, it's kind of like up here. So, it might actually be, we could maybe justify it being a little bit higher. So again, don't be afraid of being sort of sketchy, right? Being rough. There's that sort of spine. Now again, I kind of know that if I sort of draw this, right, I'm going to have a similar sort of thing. Where's his tail? Tail's going to come out of there. All right, go sort of around. And again, obviously, all this stuff is like, this is the tricky thing. Again, when we're doing sort of gesture and structure, kind of mixing these things up, right? Trying to get a good pose. Let's find center line. But in this case, all this stuff's going to be covered, right? Because like in this drawing, his sort of cloak, right? So his coat is going to sort of come down, right? And touch the ground there. Now, here again, have the pontificating finger claw. Right, so again, this is where his elbow is going to be. And up here is the collar. And I'm going to sort of have this coat going across here. So again, often we need to balance the gesture of not just the things that are sort of solid and part of the character. Often if you do have clothing and things like that that are a major part, then we need to sort of consider those as well. All right, he's got, again, I feel like that head might be a bit bigger. He's got some ears. Again, but although in this case those ears feel like they're a bit sort of spiky, pointing up, whereas his ears are they're always going back. So again, I'm just going to sort of rough those in. Again, sometimes when we're doing this kind of sketchy sort of structural stuff, right, let's get that cuff. Sometimes when doing sketchy structural stuff, it's better to be a little bit loose, right? Like let your hand go a little bit. Don't be too sort of worried, because often I feel like, again, I can draw quite structurally. I can sort of get it right, but if I'm sort of sitting there focusing on getting it right, I'm often sort of it sort of tightens up the hand a little bit. It's important to sort of get that mix of sort of gestural drawing, which again, I feel like people often overemphasize the flowiness of it. Again, it's often just a matter of we're drawing in a way where we're focusing on the emotion and feeling of the drawing, the balance, the weight, and those kind of things, as opposed to sort of worrying about structure. And again, that's often because we're going to do that later on. We're going to focus on structure after. So again, I forget, where did I have that? Yeah, you can sort of see here, that's sort of what the back of the coat would be. Again, playing around with that. I feel like the original sort of arm here might have been sort of like a little bit better. Again, a lot of it's just sort of finding scale, right? I mean, I talk a lot about ideally when we're sort of placing characters, we can, sort of measure them out and do a lot of that. Again, the reality is, often when those are good troubleshooting methodologies to have, right? Often when we're sort of sketching, again, there are other priorities which are more important. Again, like sort of gesture and character and all that kind of stuff. Again, I'm going to try and sort of make this curve not quite so, again, not quite so sort of round. Just try and make some of these curves a little bit sort of more solid to just sort of think through what's going on there. Now again, we this is where it's interesting, again, he's sort of got, right, you can see it's the same thing here. He's got this kind of split down the bottom of his coat that his tail comes out of, and you can kind of see where the foot and the pants are from there, and that's why it's so important to sort of draw through and figure out where those things are, right, where those little bits and pieces are in your drawing, because then there I can kind of can sort of put in that little sort of foot there. Again, the rest of that will probably be sort of a little bit sort of shadowed. A little bit more in the front. So again, we've got paw here. All right, grabbing this, sitting down. Again, we've got the not sure about those ears. Again, I need to think about what's happening in terms of structure. Yeah. Again, even if they might be sort of fluffy, it can be good to sort of rough in some of that. And again, see if we can get his eye, even though it might not be 100% plausible that we can see his eye there. You know, just from a structural standpoint, if we can get it in, that's sort of really good. Again, I'm just sort of resolving the shape and the size of the arms and kind of where they are. Again, it does feel like, again, I've sort of got him. I haven't properly, in my mind, I think, sort of gotten it clear exactly what's happening with that sort of posture. So again, I feel like this is going to be a little bit lower, right? His hips are actually going to be a little bit lower, right? Which again, I think sort of puts the tail, the start point of the tail, a little bit lower too. Again, that's making it feel a little bit more like he is crouching down, which is sort of what I want. Otherwise, you know, a lot of that other sort of posture stuff doesn't work. Again, we can find some of this form, see if we can sort of rough that in. And again, probably haven't fully resolved where this sort of coat is sort of coming down. You know, in terms of sort of like how it's flowing over everything. Again, that's not the trickiest. That's not the worst thing. Right. But again, it would be good to kind of show that, again, like this leg is kind of stuck out a little bit. But a lot of that comes down to just, you know, your stroke economy, exactly kind of, you know, how you're going to show that stuff being represented. Right. Put some sort of shadow there. Right. So here's the character. And again, let's see if we can put little. So I'm just envisioning the ground plane. That's all I'm sort of doing. And a really easy way I sort of start to think about it is, again, I'm sort of drawing like almost like a little ellipse underneath the character, and then thinking about, you know, okay, if there was another little ellipse, right, it's going to be sort of similar, right? And Pinocchio is going to be sort of over there. Right. Again, just sort of roughly sketch in Pinocchio. Now, when we're, again, I can kind of, I'm sort of, this is again, it's a good example of how I sort of would describe the process going. Is that often, you know, when we're sort of teaching it, right, we're teaching the principles. So I'm sort of showing in sort of previous videos how we'd go about sort of constructing the Pinocchio mannequin and sort of the sequence that you'd sort of do it in. But again, in many cases, I can sort of eyeball how big I think the head should be, and I'm kind of just visually sort of thinking about, oh, okay, that's sort of how high it is over there. And so again, when you're sort of in drawing flow, yeah, often we don't have to sort of double, triple check proportion. It's mostly here again where we've got trickier subjects where characters are sort of covered by clothing and that sort of thing, and we've really got to sort of figure all that stuff out. But yeah, I'm going to sort of have Pinocchio with his sort of little, right, I like the idea, maybe he's sort of got his hand behind his back, right, he's not body language 100% positive about this guy, as should be the case. So again, there you go. Just a quick little demo talking about how to think about sort of repeating a character, maintaining gesture and structure, and all of those things together. Again, if you've got any questions or, you know, sort of things you'd like to know a little bit more about, maybe drawing sort of different characters or whatever it might be, let me know in the comments. I'd be more than happy to sort of make additional videos or answer any of your questions there. But that's it. That's all I've got. Quick sketching demonstration. Happy drawing. Catch you around.